and gentlemen, we wanted to know, we were thinking about brainstorming as a board what to do for our 2012 launch. And typically what we would do is we would have ministers speak longer about the government's initiatives in entrepreneurship, or perhaps invite a single entrepreneur to come. And it occurred to us, this is now our 8th year. We have a track record. We have some alumni who have really succeeded. And what better inspiration could prospective TiEQuest candidates have than to hear the real life stories of our TiEQuest alumni. And so we thought it would be just amazing to invite our TiEQuest alumni to come back and speak. And we had an inn. And the inn we had was our youngest board member. He was the youngest board member ever in TiE Toronto, Haroon Mirza, who is in the panel here. And he, in no particular order, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to essentially cross-examine them. Many of you know that I'm a litigation lawyer by training, so I love cross-examining people. It's what we do for fun. So, Haroon Mirza, Cognivision, was a TiEQuest candidate, and they had, he and his university colleagues had this brilliant idea of using innovative technology to essentially track and analyze who's looking. You know when you're sitting in the elevator or in the store and there's a video going on and you're looking? Well, Haroon's technology, or really his team's technology, can actually figure out that I'm an overweight, middle-aged woman as opposed to a young, nubile, 16-year-old. That's what they can do. And so then somebody can figure out, well, age reduction wrinkling cream for her, cute lipstick that gets the guy for the other one. That's what his technology can do. I mean, it's really two-way television. It's actually kind of scary. It's amazing technology. And no surprise to us, it was named the most innovative company in 2009 in Canada, was acquired by Intel in September 2010. So not only is he a graduate of alumni, he has successfully done his exit. And that's really one of the things that entrepreneurs think about, is what is their exit strategy. Our next panelist is Jad Yaghi. He has done a number of startups. This is his 3rd startup. My mother would say he just can't stay focused to keep a job. Some of us might say he's just very, very successful.
Your mom's right.
Don't tell her that, please. He joined Veril as Chief Executive Officer in 2008 to build a business strategy from actually really innovative R&D technology, and his technology, or his team's technology, is in the area of automating 3D animation. And if you have any children, you have seen many, many great 3D movies, and their technology will really ensure that you'll see more of them and it's cheaper to produce. Roy Pereira, Shiny Ads. Those of you who actually had a chance to read the Globe and Mail today will notice that he was featured in the Globe and Mail, or his company was featured in the Globe and Mail, as a Canadian company that was successful in getting funding in the United States. And that's not atypical of TiEQuest graduates. Roy, regrettably, is yet another person my mother would say can't focus too well. He's been involved in 5 startups over the last 20 years with a real focus in internet and email software. He's been a marketing executive at a number of companies. He's got experience in Ottawa, Toronto, Silicon Valley, and in spare time he gets patents in the patents office, both in Canada and the United States and elsewhere. And then our final panelist is actually last year's TiEQuest winner. He is one of the founders and CFO of RNA Diagnostics, who was awarded not only the grand prize, but the prize for the Best Healthcare Industry Award. He also shared the prize for the Best Intellectual Property Award. And he has helped a number of medical technologies be commercialized. And RNA, incidentally, is just a great story, and I'll let him tell it because it's technology that if it's commercialized, will revolutionize not just how breast cancer is treated, but how a number of cancers are treated, because there's amazing feedback and information to oncologists. And as I said during the competition, I have friends who are struggling with some of the cancers that they're looking at ultimately dealing with. And so I want to get this done faster, quicker, yesterday. So those are our panelists. I think it's an amazing panel. It is intended to be interactive. Now, I can cross-examine. I actually know how to do it, and I have a lot of fun doing it. But you, all of you, are entitled to ask questions, should ask questions, because the idea is there's a whole universe of people watching us, many of whom are people thinking about getting into TiEQuest, becoming an entrepreneur, and wanting to share. So this is really intended to be an interactive experience, but just in case all of you are thinking of questions you might want to ask, I'm going to ask Karu the first one, which is, oh yes, there's a little green.
Sure. Here we go.
Carl, you want to help?
I think we're good.
We're good, okay. The first question is, what drew you to being an entrepreneur rather than what might be considered to be a more traditional career path? Haroon?
Sure. I think it goes back to when I was about 8 years old. When I was 8, I realized my purpose in life. And my purpose in life was to serve humanity. And as I grew older and older, I realized, okay, how will I serve humanity? How will I give back? And I wanted to give back specifically to the third world and help underprivileged individuals get medical care and get education. Those were the two elements. So as I started learning about jobs and I started learning about how one can give back and educate and provide healthcare, I realized that, wow, this takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of investment to make an impact. And then I just started doing some math. I figured, okay, well, if I get a job, can I generate enough capital to give back and make a big impact in the world? And I just realized that there was no way that it would make any sense whatsoever. And the only path for me to generate enough capital to give back to the world was entrepreneurship. Because from an entrepreneurial standpoint, see, when you're in the corporate world, you start off, at the bottom, you crawl up the corporate ladder, and it takes many, many, many years to do so. But entrepreneurship is interesting. You can actually start at the top. And when you're at the top and you can make the decisions and all that, you have control of your destiny. And I really like that element, that if you have control of your destiny, the only thing that would ever limit me from achieving my dreams was essentially, my own mind. If I thought that I could achieve it and I persisted, I felt that entrepreneurship was the way. So that's what drew me to entrepreneurship. I figured that it was the only possible solution for me to generate enough capital to give back to the world.
All right, Roy, I'm going to ask you the same question, and we can see if there's anybody who wants to ask.
I'm not sure I can follow that.
You can be less altruistic if you'd like.
So, I guess I was around 8 as well, and I kept having ideas about how to make money. I wanted to make some extra cash. I didn't have an allowance, and I kept thinking about, well, maybe I can buy this product over here because it's cheap, and then I can sell it to my friends at an increase. And I kept thinking about that. I kept thinking about different products, and so at that early age, I was thinking about, I really want to work for myself, and I don't necessarily want to work, in a day job. And I think after university, I got my first taste of a real job, and I hated it. I just hated coming in at 9 a.m. I'm just not a morning person. And I guess, to be on the other side, I don't take authority very well, and I'm constantly thinking about other things, and I want to do stuff. And in fact, in university, I was like that as well. I just wanted to do stuff. And in some ways, I want to change the world, but I don't necessarily want to change the world. I have this conversation with my wife all the time. She says, if you don't want to change the world, changing the world is, figuring out how to feed everyone. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I want to change the world how we work. I want to change inefficiencies in enterprises. I want to change inefficiencies in software or processes. That's how I want to change the world. So I see it differently. I'm constantly thinking about that. So after university, after my, one stint in a normal day job, I just wanted to do something, and I started my first startup in '92. And ever since then, I've done startups. I've gone sometimes back into larger companies, hanged out, enjoyed the cafeterias, and then I've come back for sure.
Chad?
Yeah, funny. I'm not going to even go near your guys' stories. But I fell into entrepreneurship by mistake. I mean, your mother would be proud, but I held a job down for 2 years after I graduated. But I fell into something called .com crash, and my company went belly up, and we were all fired. So the way I became an entrepreneur is very funny when I think about it. It's all about timing and luck for me. I was sitting in a bar with a friend of mine in Dubai. We were, complaining, to use a gentle word, about our bad luck. And we started thinking, well, what do we do now? And we just, started talking and getting wasted. And, I won't go into details, but we were talking about this really cool idea, how it's going to save, I used to work with a company that did logistics and warehouse software. We started thinking about this really cool idea. It's going to save them a lot of money, and only if we can get the funding for it and stuff like that. And vodka after vodka, we're getting less and less, getting more and more blurry actually. And this gentleman sitting right next to me, he's poking me. What the hell do you want? And he's like, I love your idea. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, can you tell me more? I'm like, dude, I'm not in shape now. Tell me more. Can you give me your business card? I'll be happy to talk with you. So he gives me his business card, and on it is His Royal Highness, Sheikh Muhammad something, Saudi prince. I'm like, crap. So I call him up the next day, and he tells me, come over. I love your idea. I have 17 warehouses around the Middle East. I think you guys are onto something. And within a week, he cut us a check. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. And it becomes addictive. After that, I did my second company. Then I did my MBA. And then I started, I decided to stop entrepreneurship. It's just too much stress and all that. I decided to work again. I could not hold down a job. You can't do it once you go into it.
John Jordan?
Yeah, my story is a little different. I didn't, when I went to university, I didn't think really of becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. And so I was interested, I wanted to become an accountant. And so I went through business school. I did more accounting and finance. And then I went out and I worked in public accounting, worked with a number of different companies. I joined a small public accounting firm. I was exposed to small to medium-sized businesses where I did audits. So I met the entrepreneurs, and I thought, well, this is pretty interesting. And I found the accounting side. I was getting bored. So I talked to the part of the firm, and we had this client, and he was growing a business, and I ended up going with him and growing that business, and we did. So this is my first introduction to entrepreneurship, and we grew the business from 10 people to 250 people in 5 offices across the country, and then we ended up selling it to a Fortune 500 company, and that was my introduction. And then from there, I figured that's what I really wanted to do. And now that's what I do on a basis. And that's what I did with RNA Diagnostics.
So John, since you have the mic, I'm going to start at that end. Is book smarts versus street smarts, is entrepreneurship something that's in your DNA, in your blood, or can it actually be something that is taught? And John, that's probably a good one for you to share views on.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I certainly have had a number of debates with colleagues about that. And I think it's a little bit of both. I think you have to have it in you. And I reflect back on myself, and I think I remember I had paper route, and so when I was 10 years old, I actually acquired another paper route, and I combined the two together. So I think it is a little bit in your blood, but also I think you learn it too. And I think that if you can match up or go somehow during your work experience early in your career, you can work with some really successful entrepreneurs, and then will help you. And so my answer is that I think you gotta have a little bit of it, you're born with it, but you also learn it too.
For me, entrepreneurship is not just one quality. I think it's a mix of multiple qualities. And then for me, you have to break it down and see whether you can learn each one or not, or whether you're born with each one or not. I mean, the first and foremost is you gotta be fearless. Right? You're going in the face of intense opposition. The odds are stacked against you, right? Some of us will get lucky, some may not. You gotta make your own luck. So that's the first quality. The second quality is you gotta be very good at failing. If you're not willing to fail, then don't bother calling yourself an entrepreneur. For me, that is one of the chief foundations of being an entrepreneur. You got to be able to accept failure, accept defeat, learn from it, and move on. And the third quality is you got to become really good at selling, because as an entrepreneur, you're not necessarily just selling a product, because you may not have built it yet. You're selling a vision. So and for me, that's how I define entrepreneurship. So if you can break down each one of those, and I think each one of those can be learned. I don't think you're born an entrepreneur. I think you're forged into one. And primarily by failing a lot. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of your statements. I typically think entrepreneurs have a little bit more street smarts, so they're a little bit more born with it. But you have to also understand how businesses run, and if you don't, you can still definitely be an entrepreneur. You can obviously fail. Anyone can fail. To actually decrease the risk of failure, you have to surround yourselves with good people, better people than yourself that know more about certain topics than even you do, and that's how you can increase your chances of success. But I do think also that entrepreneurship is almost like a disease. In a lot of ways, I feel, and I know my wife feels, that I'm hooked and I can't get out, and I'm going to be like this forever. I will not have a regular 9-to-5 job or anything like that. And I'm constantly thinking about what happens after I exit this one, and what do I do after that, and I really like this trend and so forth. So it's very addictive, and everyone who I talk to, I have coffees with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and they're all kind of like this. It's scary in some ways because a lot of them look at Google and look at Twitter and so forth and say, hey, I can do that too, which is great. But to Jad's point, most of us fail, and you really have to understand how to fail fast, move on, start something else.
I'm sorry, can I butt in? Just
Oh, sure, it's okay, absolutely.
because you said something very that take me off a little bit. You said you're born with street smarts. I think street smarts are beat into you by bullies, whether they're Googles of the world or whether they're the shaded bullies in your neighborhood. So anyway,
I just meant that there's a lot of people who don't have an inclination for failing, and so maybe you learn it early on in the schoolyard. I don't know.
You either become the person who beats up the bully, or you go sit in the corner and never amount to anything, right?
Hey, psychoanalyst has a real field day. Harut, your comments?
You play a psychologist?
Yeah.
No, it's just, I've been beat up a lot. I always want to talk about
I
it.
agree. Hey, maybe that's what it is. We've both been beat up on the
There you go.
The best revenge is living well. Remember that one.
Oh, I'm tracking all of them, believe me.
So one of my bullies from school, just to go on to that topic, actually found me on Facebook this year. And the guy's not doing that well, so just to put it out there. I got my revenge.
So I think you learn it. Like, I did not come from an entrepreneurial family, but the one thing is, there's a few chief characteristics that help. One is I think you, to an extent, have to be almost delusionally optimistic. I mean, honestly, like, the odds are completely against you, and if you try to attribute logic as to why you become an entrepreneur, you never become an entrepreneur, right? So you have to be borderline delusionally optimistic. I think beyond that, like, we talked about failure here, but I do believe there's a difference between failure and defeat. Okay, so failure is when you try something, it doesn't work out, you fall down, but then you pick yourself up again, and then you're willing to try again. You learn and you try to improve, but you try again. Defeat is when you stop trying. Okay? Never accept defeat. As long as you keep trying, you will never be defeated, but you can fail many, many times along the way. And then talking about, like, again, being slightly delusional, it really, really helps. And this is where, if you are not, like, if you have to learn entrepreneurship like myself, to get mentors, right? For myself, I mean, I talk about defining moments. So defining moments are moments in your life where something happens, some sort of an event happens, which changes the trajectory of your life. And one defining moment for me was meeting my mentor, who's in this room today. And meeting Bullen, I mean, he just changed my life. He was able to take me under his wings and teach me, show me the ropes, challenge me. And getting that guidance from somebody who's been there and done that, right, can open up windows and doors of opportunity that you could never, ever even imagine possible. And this is what's amazing. You can have a 5-minute conversation with a seasoned entrepreneur. I'm sure my panelists would agree to this. And the amount of wisdom you can get in those 5 minutes, it might have taken you years and years and years or a lifetime to try to get. So to help you learn to become an entrepreneur, find those mentors. And mentors are everywhere. TiE can help you, but honestly, look at the newspaper. If you read the newspaper today, and I'm going to use Roy as an example, and you learned about Roy's company, you felt, hey, I'd like to pick that guy's brain. You should pick his brain. Call Roy.
I like coffee. I need coffee. Any morning.
I think that's a common theme amongst entrepreneurs. Now,
I just want to add to that. We at TiE very strongly believe that entrepreneurship can be done. You need a number of traits, a number of factors, and one of the basic foundation of our program, TiE Institute, is to impart that behavioral change and impart those skills you need to become an entrepreneur. So you go to get into it, but these are the traits which can be picked up, can be learned. You would fail, and that's an important characteristic of entrepreneur. But these traits can be learned.
Can I add something? We talked about, let's share a funny story about Dragon's Den. So I remember a few years ago, this was right before we started Cognivision. Me and my co-founder Faisal were just playing Xbox, and then we got a bit bored and we turned on the television set. And we started watching Dragon's Den. So while we're watching Dragon's Den, we both agreed, wow, we would never go on this show, right? You're going on the show, you're giving up your ideas, it's entertainment, you don't get mentorship or anything of the sort. But then we asked ourselves another question. Out of all the judges on Dragon's Den, would we be interested in meeting any of those judges? And we decided, yeah, actually, some of these judges would be interested, it would be very interesting to meet. So that night, I drafted an email to one of the Dragon's Den judges. I just talked about this idea of this company that we had, which would become Cognivision. And I just said, hey, it'd be great to meet at some point. I think not even a day later, I got a response and we got our meeting, which is really interesting because we got to meet a dragon without having to go on TV to do it. So if you're, again, this is where everybody that you see, what the media does is the media puts these human beings on these pedestals and you think they're unreachable. Some people think that they're just untouchable. They're just people, right? Reach out, it's a numbers game. It's almost like dating. If you ask many different people out, they're going to say no. Eventually they'll say yes, right? So just keep trying. This is just another comment I wanted to make.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince or princess, depending on your preference, right? So all of you chose at some point in time to enter the TiEQuest competition. And I thought maybe I'll start with maybe Harun or Roy as to what impelled you to enter a business venture competition, particularly one which is quite intense and very labor intensive over a very short period of time. So what made you decide to enter? Roy?
I actually did not know how labor intensive it was going to be.
Oh, see, yeah, this is good.
So I will say I was naive, I was ill-informed. I was, and we can get into it, but I was quite amazed at how much time and effort it did take and length of time, but it was worth every damn minute of it. I was starting a company, nobody knew about our company, and we had no business plan, we had some great notes, so we weren't really that well organized, and I thought TiEQuest was interesting. We were looking for funding So it was a great combination of things, but to be honest, I really didn't know how long it would take. To your point, again, very good that we did. The business plan came together very well. The pitch came together over all of these different phases that we went through. So at the end, we had a very polished product.
So effectively, if there had been truth in advertising, you might have thought about it twice?
You know, if you're looking at the great abyss and you can't see the other side, you don't want to go through, right? So for me, 3 months would be, oh my God, I'm going to be dead by 3 months from now. You know, I don't know where I'm going to be. So that was a long time. I actually didn't actually realize that, but each step of the way, it was rather interesting. It was kind of like going for Survivor or something, you know, got to the next level. So it was great. It was a great experience.
All right, Jad, what impelled you? You've done a number of startups without TiEQuest. What impelled you to decide to enter Veril in TiEQuest?
Well, for me, it was very simple, right? It wasn't, I'm going to be honest about it, it wasn't just TiEQuest we went after. I mean, there's 3 reasons why we did this. A is exposure. B, which is tied to exposure, which is networking. You meet a lot of people, right? You never know who you're going to meet. Like you said, it's a numbers game. You never know who you're going to meet. You know, significantly increase the odds of us talking to more people and finding more people and networking with more people. And see, and more importantly for me was the feedback, right? You're getting exposed to all these people, you know, and this is some advice to you. You know, shut up and listen to them. I've met so many entrepreneurs who just can't stop talking about their idea. And after 3 minutes, you're like, just God, somebody save me. Listen to these people, like Arun said, for 5 minutes. You never know what they're going to tell you. They may tell you something absolutely worthless, but you know, they may tell you something incredibly useful. So that's why I go after, when I was funding my business, we went after any competition that came across, and TiE is one of the better ones in Canada, if not the best one.
Jed, if I recall correctly, Veril went through twice.
Yes, failure. Yes. But we keep your ass a second year, right? Don't forget that. Yeah, we went through in I think it was 2008. We went through. I think we got to the semifinals of prototypes. I can't quite remember. And you know, we got a lot of good feedback, and a lot of people told us, look, your idea is cool, but you know, here's why we think you're not worthy of advancing. And we took that advice to heart. You know, no defeat, no retreat, no surrender. And we polished it up, and we came back for round 2, and we came out the winners. So, you know, it could have gone either way, but I would have come for the 3rd and 4th time if we didn't win the second time.
Yeah, for us, I think the timing just worked out really well. We incorporated RNA diagnostics in March of 2010, and we licensed the technology at that time, and we put together our business plan and a pitch and our PowerPoint deck, and we were advancing the technology, but we needed money. And so we actually entered into a previous competition, which was last year for the healthcare, and we won that one. And then we thought, well, we got the email regarding TiEQuest, and I hadn't even heard of TiEQuest previous to that. But I thought, well, we needed money, so we needed exposure, and we needed to protect our story. Given the materials that we had to date, they were okay, but they weren't great. We needed feedback. And I mean, it's challenging out there to raise money, and you have to have a really good story. And so that's why we entered in, and we certainly, looking back on it, we certainly achieved all of that.
So, Herman, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, which is, if there is one thing that you wanted to pass on to somebody who's listening to us perhaps on the internet, or here thinking about whether they should go into TiEQuest, what would be the one thing you would say to them to consider before they did it or not did it?
I think if anybody's considering starting a business or has an idea, you should do it. I think it's a no-brainer. You never want to look back thinking, you know, what if? And the thing is, here's an opportunity for you to get exposed to a very important process. The process in itself is one of the most important takeaways for myself, because when Cognivision entered TiEQuest, we went along, we finished as semi-finalists, we did not get to the level that some of the other companies did. But what happened from TiEQuest through the process was, first of all, we learned how to put together our elevator pitch, we learned how to put together a business plan, it got ripped apart and it improved, and our thinking started to get shaped. And that process in itself, the type of thinking that you'll go through on how, many times you have an idea, but you have to think about how do you take that idea and how do you turn it into a company. And that thought process that you go through, for me, I found absolutely invaluable because I'd never done it before. I was not a seasoned entrepreneur by any means. So just for that exposure to the process, and by the way, through TiEQuest is how I met my mentor, which if you remember was a defining moment for me. So if it wasn't for TiEQuest, I would never have gotten my mentor. And if it wasn't for TiEQuest, I don't know how long it would have taken for us to put together our materials with the lights of fire underneath you. And eventually those very materials allowed us to improve our pitch, improve our business plan, get funding, and then eventually grow our business.
So, there's an old adage that the prospect of a deadline focuses the mind, and that's actually an example. There's actually a couple of questions from the floor, so I'm going to take this young gentleman here first.
Thank you, Nina. How do you compare entrepreneurship with leadership?
Okay, so compare leadership and entrepreneurship. So, Roy, you've got the mic, so you might as well start.
It's a good question. I think that they are very different in a lot of ways. Entrepreneurs can be leaders, they should be leaders, they need to be able to communicate, just like any leader can. They need to be able to amass a number of people to help business grow, to succeed. They need to be able to sell at some point, regardless if you are a programmer. You need to be able to communicate and instill some kind of vision in the person that you're speaking with. I think leaders definitely need to do that. Entrepreneurs, though, do need to take a look at that risk and figure out how to mitigate it, how to get to where they need to be, and have that vision. Again, leaders do need to have that vision overall, not all of them do, but entrepreneurs definitely need to have that laser point vision of where they need to go and forget about everything else, forget about all the naysayers, and just have that total almost denial aspect, which some men have all the time. But you have to go to where you need to go. And that's definitely something specific for entrepreneurs.
Well, John, I'm wondering if you have a different perspective, given that you've worked sort of in a normal day job, which is rare on this panel apparently, and also worked as an entrepreneur.
I think they're very similar. As part of being an entrepreneur, I think you have to be creative, you have to be innovative, you have to have passion and drive. And I think those same characteristics are in a leader, no matter what area you're leading. So I think they are similar.
Now, there was a question here. Go ahead.
Are there any other TiEQuest mentors in the room? And if there are, can they stand up and identify themselves so we can see?
Okay, well, I guess how everyone's getting here.
Conversation with them, perhaps?
The TiE Institute candidates, you will be paired up with suitable mentors, don't worry about it. Let them enjoy this
Yeah.
session.
So the question was,
See who the mentors are.
they're pretty well. I mean, the question was, how many TiEQuest mentors are in the room, and in fact, probably almost all of the charter members of TiE have acted in different capacities as a mentor, because sometimes the particular skill set of the charter member isn't as needed. If you have, for example, something that's a retail play, you're going to go out for a mentor that has some exposure to bricks and mortar retail, while a tech person might not be so useful. So I think there's a number of the, shall we say, more experienced people in this room have acted as mentors, and many of them have actually been mentored as well as mentoring others. The one question, and I think some of you have actually answered it obliquely, is what is the one thing that you learned? You won, so that's always a great feeling to win, but what is the one thing that you learned that perhaps you didn't think you were going to learn when you went into TiEQuest? What is the one takeaway that you had, or the biggest takeaway that you had through the TiEQuest process? And Jad, I think you've got the mic in front of you. And you did it twice, so that should be helpful.
Yeah, really, I think I already said it, but I'll repeat it for effect, is really shut up and listen. I'm serious, I'm really serious. I've met so many people who come up and pitch their ideas. And when I start trying to tell them feedback, or giving them at least what I think, my opinion is nowhere near perfect. I know that, but it's my opinion. And if you want to take something out of TiEQuest, and at least that was for me, the first year, I did not shut up and listen. I barged in. I've done 2 business before. I got my MBA.
We can't believe that. We can't believe that.
Oh yeah, whatever. I'm sure there's a video floating around somewhere. Right? And when we didn't win, I started reflecting on it and talking to more people. I realized that I missed the opportunity to listen to so many great feedback. Again, a lot of it may be worthless, but you never know where that golden egg is going to come from. The next time around, go in, hey, how are you? You're my mentor, that's great. Or you're an acquaintance, that's great. Here's my pitch, half a minute or a minute. Yeah, so what do you think? Where can this fail? Where can this succeed? Give me a memory dump. And I think that was something that I did not expect to learn, that I learned the hard way.
So John, so you had a very successful TiEQuest.
Yeah, I actually agree that the feedback and the way you polish your pitch, your business plan is through feedback. And I'm actually involved in another very, very early stage opportunity.
Which, should enter TiEQuest, right?
And right now, we don't have the benefit of having that feedback. And so we're just, and I say it's very early stage, and we need that feedback in order to develop it. So, and I think through the TiEQuest process, you went from something that was very mediocre to something that was very polished and professional.
Roy, was there a takeaway that you weren't expecting to get, especially since you really, you've done 4 or 5 startups before?
The thing that really struck me was that there were a ton of mentors and a ton of people involved in TiE, and they were there free. They weren't
Free is
charging.
good.
Free's good. They weren't charging me. They were giving me their time. They were giving me their feedback, and like what we've heard before, it's time to listen. And it struck me, and that's my one big takeaway. It was great for our business and so forth, but the one big takeaway was that there were all these people that cared. And I really hadn't seen that anywhere else. And I've been part of other organizations. I lived in Silicon Valley where there's lots of support networks and so forth. But it was quite touching in some ways to have all these people who didn't even know who I was actually take the time and give me feedback and honest feedback and help organize just the organization alone. It was just, it was unbelievable.
Arun?
I'd say the big takeaway, which I didn't expect, was this pay-it-forward mentality, just to go off what Roy's saying. But what I eventually learned, I'll just kind of fast forward a little bit as well, is this pay-it-forward mentality is in the DNA of TiE, like the global TiE network. Because like as we were growing and as we were getting mentoring from our mentor right here in Toronto, at one point we also realized that it'd be really, really helpful to get a mentor who understood our specific industry, which was software. So using a very similar process, we just contacted TiE Silicon Valley and said, hey, listen, I'm a TiE Toronto member, and I have a mentor, and he's amazing, but would it be possible to get another mentor for my industry? Because, Toronto, maybe I can find somebody in my space. And it was just a non-issue. They immediately connected us with somebody responsible for actual mentorship and mentoring, and then actually brokered an introduction, and we got our second mentor that way. And by the way, why it gets so interesting is our second mentor was, before he started his company, he used to be with Intel. So this is a really funny, interesting thing to look at is eventually when we were negotiating with Intel about the acquisition, our mentor actually linked us up with ex-Intel people to help us understand how they think in the negotiation. So it was really, really interesting. You never know the type of benefits that you can derive. And what's interesting about it, I'll just kind of talk a little bit about, the mentoring community that Vineet is actually driving. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to actually help is just to reiterate this, that entrepreneurs who have ideas, first and foremost, I think it's great to get plugged in right here in Toronto. And as you start growing and as you're maturing and graduating through this process of entrepreneurship, we can help you link up with any one of the 2,500 plus potential mentors or charter members in the world, and we can do it right here from Toronto.
That was an unscheduled plug, but we appreciate that, and it also happens to be true. So you've had many of you have sort of been with the TiEQuest process recently, some of you a little bit, that's not very long, a few years ago. I want you to look back on your journey since TiEQuest and comment what it is that you now are doing that is really directly related to your success in the TiEQuest process. You know, sort of like, you know, I wouldn't be at a certain point but for TiEQuest and what that is. And, you know, I know that all of you have participated in a number of other business competitions or other processes, but what is it that you can directly attribute to TiE? Sort of like a return on investment question, if you will. And maybe Roy, because you were a bit shocked at the amount of work, it might be a really good question for you because perhaps the investment was a little bit higher than you had anticipated at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, to some of Jaz's points, you know, I walked in here thinking that I had the perfect pitch and I was ready to go, and why the hell don't you fund me right now? So, you know, I learned a lot going through. What TiEQuest gave Shiny Ads was an ability to get in front of investors in Toronto with a credible story, first off, but also with an award. And I think that opened quite a lot of doors. We pitched to the Maple Leaf Angel Group very quickly after the third place, losing after Jazz, award. But we got funded by MLA. We got a seed round of financing from 2 angel groups in Toronto, and that allowed us to accelerate. And you know, it allowed us to close all these good accounts and so forth, and to just move the company upwards.
Thank you. John? And perhaps when you answer it, you've been involved in other business competitions.
Sure.
It might be interesting to do a little bit of a distinction between what you got out of TiEQuest versus participating in some of the other ones.
Fair enough. I mean, A is like Arun said, the process. You know, you learn a lot through the process of going through. You're not just submitting a business plan, but you're going through an elevator pitch, and you're going through a one-page pitch. I don't know how the process is these years, but at least in
It's
my
the
years.
same.
Okay, so yeah, so you go through your rounds. Sit here and talk to an investor, because you know when you go talk to an investor, you've got 30 seconds to get them excited about, oh yeah, why don't you come in for another meeting? Or, I don't want to talk to you again, right? They probably won't tell you that's what's going on in their head. So it's, the process with TiE was exactly more or less the same process as talking to an investor, as courting an investor, doing exactly the same thing. So going through that with knowing that you know you can fail and still learn, as opposed to with an investor you fail, you never know why the hell you failed, right? So that was very different from other business case competitions, and it definitely contributed to us becoming better at approaching and talking to investors. I'd say the second thing that helped us a lot, I mean, irrespective or regardless of whether we won or not, but we got a lot of exposure. You know, you talk to a lot of people, you see a lot of people. And you know, the thing about when you talk to a person, you're not talking to a person, you're talking to that person's network as well. So you meet one person, and then you know 100 people, and if you impress them, you've opened up 100 people, new people to talk with, right? So TiE gave us that conduit, that ability to concentrate a lot of potential mentors or investors or people who know investors or people who know people who know people who know people who know investors, right? And that opens up a lot of doors. And finally, you know, it gave us a chance to learn some really important lessons about being an entrepreneur. And I hope I said those.
John, it's been a relatively recent ride for you, so.
Yeah, I think I look at it as really two parts to it. There's the process, and then there's being selected as a finalist. And I think the process is great. As it really refines your story. It really focuses you. You get lots of great feedback. And so I think even if you don't win, you still have a huge takeaway financial competition. And then for us, it was, there's a lot of, investors see a lot of deals. There's a lot of deal flow. And how do you distinguish yourself from other deals? And by going into a competition, if you can at least place in that competition, it gives you a lot of credibility when you go to talk to investors. And so that's, from our perspective, that's what we found. And since the competition, we've raised $1.2 million, and we're just closing another round right now for another $800,000. So it's worked well for us.
Thank you. Question for the floor.
My name is Manal. Actually, I have two questions, one for you and one for the panel. If you have a full-time job, do you still participate in the competition? And for the panel, what's the one thing they did to overcome the fear of failure?
So absolutely, I would say almost all of our panelists, or I would say 50% of our contestants that I saw, because I was a judge and a mentor, had daytime jobs elsewhere. You know, so one of the things that we haven't talked about is, I was listening to people talk about the qualities of entrepreneurship. I want to say two things. One is they are impatient people. That's one thing I think that I find is a common thing, is they want to get it done, they want it now. They want to do the pitch, they want the commitment check today. But you know what, it is that's the part of the drive. That's it's sort of a corollary of the drive. The other thing is they're incredibly hardworking. Kunal Gupta, who is the son of Mukesh Gupta, made a comment that, well, you know, he really didn't think he wanted to do a day job after he graduated university. He was more of the entrepreneur, he wanted to be his boss. Well, I can assure you, he's working 3 times harder than he would be in any job anywhere. You know, I'm a labor law lawyer. You're not allowed to work an employee 120 hours a week, but when you own your own business, you do it anyway.
It's a sin not to work 120.
Yeah, it's a sin not to work 120 hours. So yes, the answer is there are a number of contestants who've done very well who are not full-time entrepreneurs or business venture contestants. They have a full-time job and they do it. And then perhaps you can address your question to the panel.
Yeah, what is one thing you did to overcome the fear of failure?
So what did you do to overcome the fear of failure? Okay, Jack, go for it.
You fail,
Yeah?
period. You just do it, right? At least that's how I got over it.
I agree. I totally agree. I actually used to have a fear of public speaking in my second startup. And I used to stutter, you know, when asked to speak in front of an audience like this. That's only after you get me off the drop the vodka. But it's another story. And you just do it. You just do it. It's kind of like, you know, if you're afraid of heights, you just step off and fall, hopefully with your
Parachute. Parachutes are good things, yes.
the bungee cord on it. Bungee rope. Yeah, you just do it.
Rubber band.
You don't die.
Harun?
Yeah, let's add something about, I guess, viewing risk. I remember what, it comes down to how you view the world. So when I left my first job to start Cognitive Vision, I remember somebody telling me, wow, this is really risky that you're going to go to your own startup. I actually never viewed it that way because I thought, it's not risky at all, because the bigger risk would have been staying in my job and not pursuing my dreams. And the bigger risk would have been looking back at my life 20 years from now, thinking, what if? So because I framed it that way, I don't even think like failure in itself didn't even hit my mind, because failure would have been to stay exactly where I was.
And it's not about that we take more risk. Like, I hear that all the time too. Entrepreneurs take more risk, or they don't care about risk. I don't think it's that at all. There's always risk. You just have to mitigate it better, right? And you have to do it better than your competition.
John?
Yeah, I guess how I, what I think about it is, I look back on when I'm 75 years old. If I look back on my life, will there be happy? And think that's one of my driving forces, is that you really got to make the most of your life. And being an entrepreneur, you can really do that. And it's the single most lucrative way in terms of wealth creation. So look at any family money, it's all been through entrepreneurship. You know, being a CEO of a large corporation is nothing compared to what you can do as an entrepreneur. So the fear of failure, you get over it, and you for every time you fail, you learn from it, and you'll build on that. So.
Well, in worst case, I mean, you get a very cool story for your next job interview. Seriously, that's the worst case.
But you know, it's funny, we teach our children not to be afraid of failure. We tell them when they fall off the horse, they have to get back on it. When they don't complete the single axle on the ice skating rink and they land on their you know what, they have to pick themselves up and do it. And we try to tell them that the only way you learn is by essentially making mistakes and falling. Yet somehow when we become grown up, sometimes some of us forget the importance of that lesson in our lives. And I think the entrepreneurs don't forget that. They recognize that in life too, there will be failures, but they're not defeat as long as you keep on going. And on that note, I got the signal from Suresh, and given that he is still the president of TiE Toronto and is now a muckety-muck on TiE Global, I will listen to him. I want to thank all of you for staying and participating. Now, if my range is...
Some closing remarks.
Anyone has some closing remarks? Just a few things. If things work well, there should still be a bartender out there waiting to serve alcohol, so that's good. And so, Haroon, the panelists are standing between my drink, all right? So just closing remarks for the audience on the internet. Maybe a philosophical note about TiEQuest and why people should participate.
Okay. Right before I get there, you're all learned about TiEQuest now. Really important point. The website is www.tiequest.org, and the deadline for your applications is January 31st, 2012. So just mark that in your minds, and you can start registering very, very soon. We'll send out a notification for that. So that's just an important point. I guess from a philosophical standpoint, I think there's a couple points. One is, you can redefine failure. There's no such thing as failure. There are only lessons that you learn. Okay? If there's no such thing as failure, because you're always learning from it, you take away the negative connotation from the word. And I think beyond that, my closing remark over here would just be to honestly believe in yourself and believe that anything is possible. I honestly have completely brainwashed myself into believing this. I have to believe that anything is possible. I have to believe that I'm going to be that less than 1% if I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And believing that anything is possible will help you, I think, whenever you kind of face adversity or whatever comes your way. You'll know that you'll be able to get over it. I guess just on that remark as well, one last point. One of my friends from university, Gabe, he told me something amazing. I think we were going through a hard time in university. And he said something interesting. He said, you know what? The interesting thing about the hard times is that it makes the movie of your life that much more interesting. Because if everything was just great and going up, it'd be a pretty damn boring story to tell. But when you can look back and you can remember when things got rough, right? This is going to make your story that much more interesting. That's it.
Yeah, there is no failure. There's just growth. Right? You learn and you grow and you move on. My advice is, network as much as possible. There are great people in the room and part of this whole competition. They're here to help and learn as much as possible. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that combination. Right?
I will respectfully disagree with both of you. Failure is very real, but you got to embrace it, right? It builds character.
But we've talked too much about failure.
I know, but I have to rub it into you, right? Anyway, so it doesn't matter. I have to disagree with somebody now. It's not funny reading that. The only thing I can encourage you to do is just do it. Just go ahead and do it. for the first initial application, I remember was maybe 10 minutes worth of my time. Just submit it. And you never know, if you get selected again, just do the next round and just, just let the momentum carry you.
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself whether you're really serious about this. And this is it's a serious competition. There's it will improve your the way you think about your business. It moves you from being amateur to being professional. And so if you're really serious, then it's low risk. Is you do your first elevator pitch and take it from there. But it's a good process and highly recommended.
So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are considering competing, January 31st, 2012, www.TiEQuest.org, and Haroon Mirza is our chair for the 2012 TiEQuest competition. Encourage you all to come. I want to end on a note that, Suresh, did you want to say one last comment?
Yeah, I just want to invite everybody to participate and contact Haroon Mirza. I enjoyed working with all these people, and I'm sure you will be inspired and you would enjoy working with them as we go along this journey.
I want to, yes, I think that's great. I had a note from someone who's not here who said she would want to come here but couldn't make it and was not a successful TiEQuest finalist. But a number of years went through the process and said it was the best $150 she ever spent, because for that $150 she got an MBA and had a pitch and fund money, and she went on and found money elsewhere. So not through the TiEQuest process, but she took the learnings that she learned through TiEQuest to make herself a better candidate elsewhere. And at the end of the day, even though she's not on our roster of TiEQuest winners, to me she's very much what TiEQuest is about. And on that note, I bring the formal part of the program to an end. I hope you can enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing all of you in some capacity through the TiEQuest 2012 process. Thank you very much.
Allow us, on behalf of the board and TiE and on your behalf, I'd like to thank our most charming host, Neelan Dutta.